thank you, Brandon Hodde, as always, for letting us use your amazing music. If you use Spotify or any other forms of music, please look up Brandon Hodde, Hodde, as he lets us use his music for Team Awesomism because he supports autism. So today I have a really awesome guest. We have been following each other for quite a while on Twitter, now called X. And I know he is as strong of an activist. He's called himself a carer and an advocate, but as far as I'm concerned, he's an activist because he fights. So, and I love people who fight for their children and make it about the cause, not the applause. And I can say 100%, I know that's not what he does. He's not trying to fight for applause, he's fighting for the cause. So it's really nice to have him. My only negative to Paul is that he is a Minnesota Viking fan. And as someone who was born and raised in Chicago and a diehard, lifelong Chicago Bear fan, I have a little bit of issue with this, but at least it's the Vikings who do draft quite a bit of Florida State players. So that makes them a little better. And he's not a Green Bay Packer fan. So that's the best. Okay. So with that, I will let Paul introduce himself and tell you a little bit about him and what he does.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for asking me to come along today. My name's Paul Ridley. I live in the UK in Milton Keynes. Yes, and I am a Viking fan, as you said it. They're coming over this year, so hopefully I'll be able to see them. I'm 59. I've been a carer for my son for 34 years, 35 this year. And everything's been a fight. Married, 2 children. I've got a daughter also with Asperger's. My son's autism he's at the severe end, as they used to say back in the day. He's non-verbal. He needs 2 to 1. He needs help with washing, eating, feeding, and he has erratic sleep problem. At 16, he developed epilepsy.
Oh.
Just 2 weeks after we got him diagnosed, we were fighting for years to get him diagnosed. Everyone was saying he was global retardation, then it went autistic tendencies, but no one would stick their head on the block. And we saw a professor who saw him straight away, said he's autistic. Why hasn't he been diagnosed? He also has irritable bowel syndrome, which I call IBS. And when we had lockdown here in the UK, all the services were stopped. And my son relies a lot on routine, although he may not be able to talk and communicate because he don't use PECs and he doesn't use sign language. Well, he uses sign language. He does that, which means please, but he thinks if I do that, I'll get a bag of crisps. That's all it's for. So, but yeah, and he was at home, and for someone who likes going out and could walk 16, 17 miles a day, any weather, it was like, wow, his world was destroyed and he got depression. I was fighting for services and that because all they were doing was sending people to the home.
Right.
And we can't even have family members in the home when he's at home. It freaks him out completely. And then when the services restarted, they were cutting his days down and giving other people more days. And I started rocking the boat. I was being in the press, and the local authority we were investigated for beating him. They reckon there was bruises on the bottom of his back, which turned out to be sores. Actually, they were scars that he had from when he was 4 years old, when he had bone marrow injections, because they thought he wouldn't be able to walk because he had a curvature of the spine. And I mean, we did get told that he'd been in a wheelchair for life, but we proved them wrong by 16 doctors. And it was a lovely day when they said, I took him in, I just put him down, he walked. And I said, can we have new doctors, please? You obviously all told me you couldn't walk. But yeah, we're fighting the local authorities here in the UK. We've been to the local ombudsman 3 times now, and we've won 3 cases. On each occasion, they had to apologise. He started to get back into the routine of going to the daycare and the respite again, but they were changing it all. It wasn't settled. And we then got accusations of, were we giving him the correct medication? Can we have a blood test, when they knew that a blood test with him, it couldn't be done unless he was sedated and all this, that, and the other. Were we giving him the correct food? Were we feeding him? It was, all this was being aimed at us. And I was all of a sudden fighting more, and trying to deal with my daughter as well. And although I've got a good woman behind me in Sarah, and she's been married to us now for all these years, and without her strength, I wouldn't be able to do this kind of stuff today. Yeah, and we turned up for a meeting to see how the services were going, and the local authority said, sorry, in 2 weeks' time, everything ends. You what? He's got nothing? Yep, that's it. And they sent him back home, even though they knew what COVID had done, and this was way back in 2022. So he was at home from April until October. During that time, we didn't get any help until around August time, which we've been rocking the boat and fighting again for. And we also found that when we found the new place, I said, well, what about the transport to get to it? And they were umming and ahhing, and I've recently found out through what they call a subject access request in the UK, that the senior management had a meeting and made a decision to put my son into residential care without involving us, which in the Care Act says, which I'm now fighting with the local government ombudsman. So, but when he got kicked out in April to when he went back to services in October, I was a size 32 waist. I went down to a size 28. The weight was just falling off me. I was also diagnosed with diabetes type 2, which the doctor said was due to the stress. Yes. And I had anemia, I had everything going on. I turned up at a council meeting, which was recorded, and it was like an interrogation. We took my son had seen a doctor 2 days beforehand, and the council just didn't believe him. But as I say, so I've been fighting, and I've been fighting for change, and I don't do it for my ego. I don't do it for cash. I'm not building a brand. Right. And if anyone offered me an award and say, oh, you can have this, or an honor, I would say no. My reward is getting things changed so people don't have to go through the hell that we went through. You know, it's bad enough being a Vikings fan without the extra stress to go through on top fighting authorities. But yeah, and that's all I'm asking for now, is to change things. And if I can make it better for one person, then I've done my job. And I've made contacts.
I understand, and I agree with you. This is why I have really stood very strongly with both Team Awesomism and, I'm known as Awesomism Mom, where I blog, and this is what the podcast is on, but for Team Awesomism. But this is why we formed Team Awesomism, because it's going to take a team of us who are really out there fighting, because, I get kind of frustrated when I hear people, oh, autism awareness. And I say the same thing every single time. And I say it every time on my podcast. I say it to everybody who will listen to me, because I want people to put this in their head. And I use this example. If I'm sitting in my desk looking out the window and I see an elderly person on a bike fall and they get hurt, I'm aware that they're hurt. But if I go back to working, I'm doing nothing. If I accept that they're hurt and I accept that I have to do something, then I actively get up, I go out, I help them, I call 911, and someone comes in and helps them. Okay? We have got to get beyond this awareness and start pushing acceptance and activism, because, and I know everybody says, well, we all have our own causes, and we do. But what people don't understand is autistic adults, they go from being children to adults. When they are adults, okay, it doesn't go away. It doesn't get easier. In fact, if they're not stimulated properly, they regress. Okay. And parents are now older. They're starting to get, like I know with me and my husband, we're 63 and 64, taking care of Peyton. I get tired way quicker, different things. And if we don't start speaking up, and there's so many people who could just spend 5 minutes a month, make one phone call to an elected official, put a tweet out, put an Instagram post. I got all the time in the world to argue about everything else known to man. Just retweet an autistic carer or an autistic adult or an autistic family member so that millions of people see our story, because it's like I was speaking at an event with a bunch of activists a couple weeks ago, and I stood up and told the story, and they all went, "Oh," and I thought, yeah, this happens every day, all day. Don't just do something.
Mm, yep. I mean, I don't know what the feeling is like if this happens over stateside, but in the UK here, it's not just me, but I've found out since I've been getting it on this new path that has taken me, is that a load of carers, when they raise their head up, right, we're going to raise them and shout and make noises, that they are then treated bad by the local authorities. It's like, first, it's the carer's fault. It's all this, that, and the other. And I got asked after caring for Keith for over 30 years, I got asked by senior management if I wanted autism training.
What?
And I'm thinking, you what? But I mean, in the UK, there's nothing to training to do with non-verbal. I mean, non-verbal is overlooked here.
Right.
How the local authority deal with it is, so get someone to come in with someone who's autistic, and they'll so the autistic person has got a guardian. Then the people will sit in the table and they'll ask him questions and see how he reacts. Well, that don't work with someone who's non-verbal. The person
Right.
you have to talk to is the carer. And I mean, recently when Keith had his accident and he was badly burnt and he got rushed to a hospital, he had third-degree burns. And the hospital, I said, look, he's non-verbal. And they said, well, okay, you can stay in the room with him and one parent at a time. Yeah, that's fine. And we explained to him what it was like, and they spoke to us. And the doctors all got it, but the nurses didn't. A nurse came in, and I said, look, if you're going to take your temperature, you've got to do the thing on the head, and you cannot put a blood pressure on him. She said, okay, walked straight over to the bed, got the blood pressure thing out, put it on him. And he
Oh,
went, I've since worked with the hospital and done a video because they didn't know how to communicate, because he can communicate, but we know
right.
how he communicates.
Right.
So we're the experts in dealing with that. And because they seem to think, well, because he can't communicate, that means he can't think for himself. He can't do
Right.
anything. He's mentally incapacitated. Trust me, during COVID, when I was trying to get a break and I was trying to keep the table, because he became like a lynch to me. It was like a mine. And I just didn't have a break at all. It was 24/7. And I would it was run around the table like Keystone Cops, trying to keep the table between them. And he would think, well, okay, then if I pick up the cup and drop it on the floor, Dad's going to come over, get the cup. I can then get hold of Dad. So he thinks, you know,
Yes.
aware of what he's trying to think of things to do. So yeah, he's a right daddy's boy. But when the Autistic Society over here, when we have the Autism Week and Autism Day, they all show the ones that can talk, are geniuses, and all this and the other.
Yeah.
They don't show the severe end, which requires a 2-to-1. I mean, the reason basically I still think today that the LA got rid of us was because I was asking all the wrong questions that they didn't want me to ask. And they thought by getting rid of my son, because they transferred the funding over to the NHS Health Authority now instead of the local authority, they thought they'd get rid of me. But instead, I went from I got in the national press, I've been on the national news and all this and the other, just to raise awareness and to try and get change. I'm talking with politicians, and it was the LA are only just coming around to working with us again. So, but yeah,
Unbelievable.
a constant fight, you know. It never stops.
No, it doesn't. See, that's the other thing that people that, I had somebody ask me one day, how can I help, an autism family that has an autistic adult? I said, well, contact them because every single one of our situations is different. And it may be something as simple as you go over to their house and sit and have a cup of coffee with them and have a conversation and let them kind of just feel like someone cares. Because too often we as autism parents feel like we're talking to the wind. People go, oh, oh, and then on they go. And you think, I don't want your oh. I want you just to talk to me. I want for that 15 minutes that I don't have to think about the stress in my life, because then when I have to go back to it, I'm a little bit refreshed. Self-care is so important. And I don't know if you're aware, I'm sure people that will listen to this podcast aren't aware, but one of the things that we're in the process of doing with Team Awesomism is we had a high-end tech company that does technology for special needs, for that, hospitals, all that kind of stuff, come to us, and they are basically in-kinding a state-of-the-art, fully custom designed, custom built app. So we will have our own app, and on that app, we're going to have like music, we're going to have podcasts, we're going to have blogs, we're going to have daily inspirationals. But the most important thing to me about this app is we're going to have roundtables, and we will do 15 to 16 roundtables a month. And the roundtables will be 4, 5, 6 people every single time. And every single time an autistic adult will be in on that roundtable. So if we have doctors, if we have lawyers, if we have activists, if we have parents, if we have whatever we have, because we're going to have every single topic known to man, okay, there will be an autistic voice, because autistic adults do not have enough of a voice. And nothing angers me more than when, like, I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman, but a young son, say to me that Peyton and I needed to do something so that we had credibility in the autism world. Now, he had no clue that because he didn't pay attention first, he was just new to it and thinking he had all this credibility because I guess he told himself he did, right? And that he, if we wanted to have credibility, I was like, first of all, I was asked to go and speak at ICANN Dubai, one of the most prestigious events that Temple Grandin was the keynote at, this whole 9 yards. I'm thinking, okay, whatever. But what angered me, none of that bothered me anywhere near as much as it bothered me that he thought my son, who's 24 years old and autistic, did not have credibility. That shows what's wrong. We need to listen. And even if they're nonverbal, you're his voice. And when we were at ICANN Dubai, there was a young man on the stage, and his parents, his dad got up there, and oh my gosh, there was not a dry eye in the whole place. And his dad said, my wife kept saying, it's here. He just can't do it here. And we would say, his dad would speak for him because his dad knew his body language, right? And he would then clap because he'd get so excited that his dad was speaking for him to us. And the crowd was like, yes. And we were parents and therapists and doctors and, all of us and other autistic adults. This young man had a voice. He may not be able to have spoken what he thought, but he had a voice, and he was completely nonverbal. And this mentality of if they're nonverbal, they don't have a voice is so frustrating to me.
Tell me about it. I mean, I often see my son, and I still see him as that now, one day, is getting the key and opening the lock. and
Yes.
everything. Well, I judge him as like an oyster, and one day he's going to open up to reveal a beautiful pearl inside, and that's I've always kept that going. But as you said earlier as well about getting older, I always thought I can go on forever and ever and ever. But then lockdown and COVID came along, and then I realised I can't do this no more. And I think when the support that we had gone, I realised how important the support was. And the point I'm trying to push to all the LAs and the government officials nowadays, they talk about all the health and all this, that, and the other. Well, excuse me, if you give the carers, go to the carers and say, look, what support do the person you're caring for need? And you give that person the correct support, that's going to have a benefit effect on the mental health of the
Yes.
carers, on the person. The carers might even go out to work full time. But you get the correct support in place. Don't think about the tick boxes, ignore the tick boxes. It's about meeting needs, not targets. Meet the needs that'll protect the carers, and then it will build on. But it just seems at the moment, no, it's not like that. I mean, I've just done a thing where I'm going to be talking at a conference for Carers UK coming up soon, and I'll be meeting contacts and talking there. But it's an ongoing fight, and people say, "Well, have you got power of attorney or guardianship?" And for example, when he was in the hospital with burns, and I said, "Well, the context you're bringing it up in doesn't really relate to what we are discussing. We are discussing about you giving a letter so he can go back to daycare or respite." And I said, so do you actually know the law? And the people who quote it actually don't know the law.
Right.
So then we have to become lawyers as well as carers. Uh, you know, it's really frustrating. And because then you're talking what the truth of what is happening, it's you're like classed as the troublemaker. Let's get rid of this person. Let's get rid of them. And but as I say, I'm working along now. I've been talking with a lady called Paula McGowan in the UK who got she lost her son Oliver many years ago, and she's got the only mandatory training passed through law called the Oliver McGowan training, which has been done in the NHS Health Authority side. So all staff have to have it, how to deal and whatnot. And I'm pushing on the non-verbal side of that because it's basically ask basically to the person, or if not the carers, if they're non-verbal and cannot communicate by signs or pecs. Ask them and listen, not in one ear and out the other.
Right.
Actually listen, write it down, and then the third part being act. Listen, and then act on what it is. Talk with the carers and whatnot. And I'm pushing on the non-verbal. Obviously, if you can't talk to the person, you have to talk to the carers. And some people say, "Oh, well, you haven't got power of attorney and whatnot." I don't know what the law is on your side, but over here, if my son was talking, he could walk into a courtroom and say, "I want my mum and dad officially to be my guardians or
Right.
power of attorney." If he's non-verbal like my son, we have to be monitored and followed for 3 to 5 years, like we're criminals, bank accounts and everything before they give us a power of attorney. So it's like we've done nothing wrong except care, but you're checking us out, and yet we've done all the fight in that forum. And of course, if you haven't got the money, some people can't do that.
No, listen, I completely agree. It's very frustrating to me. The stories that come to me, this is part of the reason why when we were offered this app, I really jumped on it. I'm spending hours and hours because I want these roundtables. Listen, I want to have like you and your son at a roundtable with a lawyer so that that lawyer can say, I didn't know all of this. Because too often, nothing against the lawyers, the doctors, the therapists, but too often they're so involved in their own world that they don't have the time or energy to listen to us parents. And we need to work together because if lawyers would start stepping up and saying, to elected officials, and I know I worked in politics for 30 years in the United States, okay? They would start saying, look, you guys are doing this backwards, okay? You're not, these laws you're writing are not serving your constituents. If people start talking that way, then they start listening. You know, I would get people to call me and say, Lynn, blah, 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 because I worked in it. And I would say, look, don't yell at us. You have to talk to the, this, that we're trying to do this. And I think putting people in a round table so that everybody's voice is getting heard, if it just breaks through to one person, that's how we have to build it.
Yeah.
Going and screaming from the mountaintops, they're not listening to us, okay? But we start forming coalitions and teams of us saying, we're tired, you know? I mean, like University of Wisconsin just did a study, I believe it was the University of Wisconsin, that just did a study about how most autistic parents are diagnosed with PTSD. And I was
Wouldn't surprise,
diagnosed with PTSD.
wouldn't surprise me. I know. I mean, I know when there was one day I was due because when my son used to get respite, it literally is 10 minutes walk. And one day I couldn't get out of bed. I've been to see a doctor a couple of days beforehand, and I was having the weight loss. So you start thinking the big C. You're
Right,
thinking cancer. And I could not get out of bed, and I was due to walk him down because he takes 2 to 1, and obviously the wife couldn't then walk him down. So they phoned up the respite place and said, "Look, you've got a minibus. Can you come and pick him up?" I couldn't move, and they wouldn't. They wouldn't come and pick him up. They then phoned up in the afternoon. My son is then going into a meltdown because he knows he should be going somewhere. So I
right.
got Sarah trying to deal with him, me laid up in bed, hearing Keith going, and I couldn't move at all. And the doctor's phone back with the results, and I was required immediately to try and get down there. And I couldn't get out of bed. But what had happened was that's when they found out that I had diabetes. But my sugar levels, where they're supposed to be between 5 and 6, they were 18. They said they're surprised I could not move. And I'm one of them that is, if I feel ill, and people were telling me to go to the doctors and things like that, and I said no, I will. Once Keith is sorted out, then I can sort myself out. And
Right.
my worry is him. I will put him first, and my daughter and my wife before me. And I've started to put the weight back on now. I've got the diabetes under control. That
Right.
everything's going rosy. I've had alopecia 3 times in the past. It's grown back each time, and that's all due to stress. I've had 2 heart attacks, and that's both times when I was fighting the council. And even when they kicked Keith out the services, I was having chest pains, and the GP turned around and told me he made an appointment, got me to go and see the cardiologist. And I said, no, I've got to sort out Keith. I can't go anywhere without sorting out Keith. And that I always put my kids first. I don't know if that's whether relates from where I was brought up, because mum and dad were alcoholics, and the drink came first, and I've always made sure that the kids come first for me. And I don't know if that's maybe the common person I am, but I've been involved in politics before at a local level. And when things started going back to us, we contacted our local councillors that are on the serve the council, and one of them was the leader of the council. No help whatsoever. Not one.
It's really
The
sad.
MP who's in Parliament has been very good. I've asked him to do. He's done what I've asked him to do. Sometimes I may not get the answers I like, but at least he's taken it to the top level, if you know what I mean. So, and he's working with us as best as he can. But yeah, it's about building that, as you say, making the noise, and there's a strength in numbers. And I found during COVID and during when Keith was at home, the most support I had outside the family was from other carers now on Twitter, and seeing what they were going through. and thinking, well, hey, I thought I had it bad. There's people worse out there.
Yeah.
I even had, um, there was a quote I did. There was something on Kirk Cousins' story. He posted about putting up a Christmas tree too early, and I said, well, we have to put ours up 4 weeks in advance and do it bit by bit because of the change. And Kirk Cousins replied to me and sent me a link to a local autistic group in Minnesota who I could contact and whatnot. So I'll give him his credit on that. He didn't send me an autograph picture or anything though, but yeah, he understood and got that. So
I absolutely love Kirk Cousins. My grandparents were immigrants from the Netherlands. And so I went to Dutch Christian schools in America. And Kirk Cousins went to the same school system I went to, which is a private school system. So I have a real soft heart for him because there's not many of us that go through that. And so I have a real soft spot. I do like him. I really like him because I think he's a good human being. But I'll tell you my favorite Brit story is one time when I was over in Great Britain, I met with Lord Tim Clement Jones, and Lord Tim Clement Jones is a big supporter of autism. You know, he's very strong advocate for it. And he actually took me and a friend, down to the House of Lords. We had tea and we got to go with him. And, and it was really actually kind of fun because I worked in politics at the highest level here. So we had, friends, mutual friends. But what a nice human being he was. And, there's been a couple times I've seen people say, I just wish one of the lords would, listen. And I've always said the same thing, go to Tim Clement Jones because he does. And he cares. He does care. Autism is important to him. And, I think here's my feeling on it as coming out of that, because I lived in DC. I feel very strongly that a lot of times they hear us, but they're so bogged down with other things. And that's part of the reason why, too, we've done Team Awesomism, and this app is going to be so important because we want to give the voices, because, like, let's just say for the sake of this discussion that we have a conversation about nonverbal and we do a roundtable about the nonverbal and you and your son are on there, we can take that roundtable and send it to different people to listen to it. And it will be a multiple discussion, not just a podcast where, like we're doing now, where it's just us speaking, but we can have a lawyer on there, we can have a doctor on there, and they can give their opinion. And then you send it to others and say, look, this isn't just me saying this, this is them saying this. And that's why these roundtables, I'm living for, creating these roundtables. And what I love about the app, and I did not know this until I started working on the app, is, people can take what they want off your website, but your app is proprietary. So they can't come at us and say, I'm really sorry, but you can't complain on here. You know what I mean? And
yep.
it's going to be like, sorry, we have our own app and we are complaining because we own the app. And,
Yep.
And that's one of the things why all of this is so important to me, because I see so many of us parents and autistic adults on a daily basis on X, on Instagram saying, is anybody listening? Hello, hello, and then we all kind of join together and we get kind of, for the lack of a better description, we find that comfort in our numbers, but we need the people outside of our comfort zone to listen.
I think, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but I know here as well that it's the fear factor. People are scared if they put their head up and say, oh no, enough is enough, or look, we've got to have this change and that change. A lot of carers I know personally have said to me that they're scared. They've seen what happened to me because I spoke out. Some carers that knew me were even told, apparently they told me, they were told to be careful of speaking to me
See, that's so
And
wrong.
they were trying to cut me off. I think they could see what was happening, and I was clugging together with other carers, and we were all getting their stories and all this and the other from not just my local area, but from different parts of the country. That by doing what they did to us, they opened me a new path for me. I wasn't going away. They just made things worse
Mhm.
because now they couldn't. My son, they couldn't do note with my son anymore. He was nothing to do with them. So I don't have to worry about them saying, okay, we're going to put him in care because there's nothing to do with him anymore. So
Right.
by doing what they've done, it's freed me because it was all I said to them. I've got it on tape in 2021. You're doing something behind the closed door, and I think you're trying to take my son off me. Oh no, no, we're not. I got an email that was sent to a local councillor who was responsible for cabinet about 2 or 3 weeks before my son was kicked out, saying that all the staff didn't want him kicked out. They're all trying to keep him in there. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, without notice, bang. Even the social workers that we were dealing with at the time didn't have no clue. They got a phone call just for the matters. So it was crazy. I was causing too much trouble by
Right.
saying
Right.
things how it was and speaking the truth. Um, and they didn't like it. For example, they said my son had smashed the door on the minibus, and he'd broken the seatbelt, etc. I did went and got all the invoices from the council, repair firm, for repairs to minibuses. None had the so-called damage repairs that was alleged, not even to a
Oh
seatbelt.
my.
And when I sent it to the ombudsman, and the ombudsman said, "Well," I said, "Well, that's evidence." They were conspiring to get rid of my son because they got rid of all the complex behavior people who had autism. I've heard stories of one mental abuse, mental health abuse, torture, and all this that and the other. But yeah, and the ombudsman said, well, perhaps they fixed it in house. I said, well, how can they? They've got to be done by a proper firm because they're carrying people with complex disabilities
Right.
around. So you cannot. It's not a thing you can do in house. A seatbelt, by law, it has to be done in this country by a garage. And so the people that are governing, unless you go to court, and again, you've got to have the money for that. It's really, yeah, yeah. It's been a
It is
nightmare
hard.
road. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a nightmare road. There's been times when, like you, bang my head like against a brick wall, and you think, oh, enough's enough. I can't go on no more. This is doing damage to my family. I mean, now my son's settled back down again, and we're all in a positive place, which has given me the evidence to fight more and whatnot. And I'm working and doing more things with other agencies and conferences and interviews and all this, that, and the other. So I will keep on shouting now to the rooftops until change is made. I'm in a parliamentary group, which is set up by an MP, and we've got shadow cabinet members coming to talk, and we're hoping to change something in the manifesto for when the elections are done this year. But all I can do is stand up, and it's not just about autism, but it's about the carers side as well, because that I think links
I do too.
with autism because the pressure
Healthy
that you,
parents, healthy
yeah,
parents also help make healthy children, whether they're adults with autism or children. Because if you're constantly stressed and you're constantly like on edge, they become that way.
yeah,
So I agree. But, it's a little different in the United States. I've heard I go into that Wednesday, X topic room on autism on Twitter. And I hear, like some of the warrior moms and send and, stuff. And I hear, and I know they've asked me a couple times, like one time I spoke, they said, what's it like in the US? It is a little different for us. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that if we, and I'm going to say this from being as someone who was literally in the political side of it, unless you hear it, sometimes you don't know it either. So by putting it out there, that can help. I'm not saying it always changes because a lot of times you got to really fight. I get that. And sometimes, they come at you. I mean, this happens every day, all day, up and down the street in America, too, over issues. But at the same time, it just takes that one person. And maybe it's not an elected official. Maybe
Mm.
it's a professional athlete or a professional singer or a movie star or somebody who has a child and they go, oh my goodness, I'm lucky. I'm not dealing with this, but they are. And maybe we should raise more, activism about their cause. You just don't know who hears it. And that's part of, again, why we're doing the app is because we want these voices heard. And oh, by the way, everyone that hears this, autism is worldwide. We're all
Exactly.
dealing with it.
Exactly.
What we deal with in America in political, I mean, we're probably, excuse me, the closest to the UK politically because, Americans in the UK are very strong allies, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Okay. But all of those kind of things are relative. Like in the United States, we're much more state orientated. Our governors have a little bit more power. So, you can live in one state and get things and not the other and everything else. Okay. But one thing that unites us worldwide is autism. All of us have very similar stories. And this is another reason why I want to do these roundtables, because how much more beautiful would it be than to have you and a parent from the United States that has a nonverbal and a parent from India who has a nonverbal, and then two doctors sitting on there and they listen.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a brilliant idea, and I'd be up for it. Um, Anything to help and improve things and make it better, not only for the people we care for, but then generations to come.
Exactly.
Um, I mean, and I think also as well, I remember when my son, they called him a special needs school over here when he was younger, and they put him, it was supposed to be a top school in the area. And my son would like to go up like that. He would tap you. And they locked him in a room on his own with a teacher, kept him segregated because he went up to somebody in a wheelchair and did that. And they kept him in a room, segregated from everyone else. He used to see him playing outside, all the other children and that being outside. And I believe what happens during the early years, which is, as you said, they turn into adults, can have an effect on adulthood. And it's like one thing Keith has always had. He'll always, he'll play games on you. If he goes up to you and goes like that, or grabs your top, and you go get away, I got a reaction. I'm going to do that again. He'll
Right.
giggle and do it more. But if he did that and you ignored him, he'd say, "Well, you're no fun. I ain't going to do it no more," and walk off. He'll find something else to do, but he'll have that glint in his eyes and the grin on his face. And for example, once he coughed when he was in front of another user, and the other user went mad. So every time he saw that user, he would go, and of course, this was before COVID as well. So, and the because he got a reaction,
Right.
and he loved bald men. He would go up again with bald men. My wife is mixed race, and she's got afro hair, and he loves putting a hand. I think they call him in the UK a knit nurse. You would think is what it would be, but he would always grab your top, and whether you're male or female, it wasn't done in a sexual way.
Right.
He would grab you like either A, if he's not feeling too right, well, if he's going into a seizure, he would do it, or he wants attention, he would do it. And during what was going on, the council phoned us up and said, "Is everything okay at home?" This is after going back after COVID. Yeah, he's starting to go back. Everything is sort of like getting back to normal. Oh, just that he grabbed a woman's top today. Yeah, well, he always grabs top before. Well, and they said to me, and well, we think it was in a sexual way. And I said, well, was he turned on? Did he have an erection? And the moment I said that, she went, oh no, it wasn't, and they dropped it. But that's the kind of games they were
Right.
playing, and at what we can do to try and get rid of my son. We've got it on tape that if we didn't get a blood test for my son, the services would stop.
See, yeah, these are the kind of stories that really need to be told. This is why I really want to have you on a roundtable with some other, parents, because that's one of the things we're the most excited about with the app is being able to share these stories, share what we live with. Because I also think that when other people, like, okay, I'm going to tell you something that really was really good the other day. This really was great. Peyton and I were at an event, and Peyton he designs things and he makes these chalk art things and stuff. And we go and we do it more. We use the money to help, other autistic adults. Okay. But we do it more to help get people to come up, talk to us, learn about what we do, and, bring more autism acceptance out there. But this teacher came up and she said, I see you're selling the t-shirts you have on. And we said, yeah, because we have our Team Awesomism. She said, I want to buy one. And she said, because I want to wear this because I want more people to hear about you. I said, thank you. Then she went on to say, are you guys on Instagram? Yes. She said, I started following autistic adults on Instagram because she said, I'm not disrespecting all the training and all of the classes I have to go to, but I learn more about how to deal with an autistic in my classroom by hearing an autistic adult talk about their experiences or how they feel or what they did as a child. She said, I learn more from them than I learn from any class I sit in. And that made my day because I was like, this is exactly what Team Awesomism is about, giving those autistic adults a voice and giving the parents a voice. That was one of the reasons why I was so honored to speak at ICANN Dubai. I mean, it's ICANN, but that one happened to be Dubai, is because when I saw who was speaking, it was Temple Grandin, it was Tom Island, I love, and several other autistic adults, but it was parents. It was a wide variety of us who got up there and said, I'm tired. I'm tired. We have a journey. And after being at ICANN, I was determined to do this app because I thought we all need to have that, almost like we're at a conference 24/7. You're having a bad night. You can't sleep. Your son's not sleeping. You go on the app, you research, you just need something funny, but it's not funny, haha, but something that will spark your spirit. You find that roundtable or that podcast or something on that app, and that helps you. That's what this is about. It's almost, the way I describe it is, it's a town square. We're going to have everything. We're going to have, excuse me, people who will help them learn how to dress for success, how to get a job, how to deal with this, how to groom their hair better, all the way up to the doctors, the lawyers, the nurses, the parents. It's going to be everything. And the guy I'm sorry?
I said that sounds brilliant. Sounds awesome. I mean,
Thank you.
what you
Thank you.
just said about the sleep thing. I mean, over here in this country, if it keeps awake and I'm with them during the night, I've got the NFL. So,
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you're on a different time.
brilliant. Yeah. So, yeah, it's the early hours of the morning. So that's how it's got sort of like back into it again over the years. But yeah, and I get it. I get what you're saying. That is brilliant because I say I found support. I used to think with carers and that I spoke to online and locally, because those days you get when you're fighting and you think and you're reading stuff and whatnot and you think, is it me? Am I imagining things?
Mhm.
Is he really like that? Has he been doing that? And I would try and step back and take the parent out off. And then you read the paperwork that you've got. And for example, I usually use this term. If I've got a social worker coming round and I'm banging away with a hammer and I hit my thumb and I stand there cursing and swearing, and then you think, okay, that's it. Then you get the paperwork from the social worker, and the social worker says, when I arrived, Mr. Ridley was cursing and swearing. missing out the reason why I was
Right.
cursing, swearing. So then in the paperwork, you are made to look even more worse. It's sort of like to always support them and not what was going on. I mean, that day I was laid up, they phoned up my wife in the afternoon. And they said, and they knew that they'd been looking after Keith for over 15 years. So it's not like he's only been in there a few months or whatnot.
Right,
So, and
right.
they know the family. And for them to turn around, having known that what was happening, I was laid up ill and Keith would be going into meltdown. The first thing they said to my wife was, "Good morning, Mrs. Ridley. How are we feeling today?" Which was then, she said, "How do you think I'm feeling? I've got Paul laid upstairs in bed, got Keith, no thinking about," and it was like they want you to react in a certain
Right.
way so that it can be used against you. I mean, we had Keith brought home one day because they accused, apparently it was getting bad. They said he was attempting to bite people. I said, attempting to bite? He never bites anybody. And I said, well, bring him home. He's obviously not safe there. I said, if you can restrain him. They said, no, we can't. I said, what is it going to be next week? I said, is it going to be if he stands next to a female? It's going to be called he's attempted rape. You're just pulling out stuff to try and blame him. And I said, well, can you restrain him? We're not allowed to restrain him. I said, well, bring him home then. And when they dropped him off, I said at the door, I said, if you're out walking with Keith and he goes to walking the road, are you going to restrain him? I'm PBS trained. The PBS means positive behaviour support. And I
Mhm.
said, yeah, but are you going to restrain him? I'm PBS trained. That was because I asked that question, that was used against me in evidence as being unreasonable. And
Oh
I'm asking the
my.
question, and I'm not, so that's the kind of thing. But I would love to be involved in this round in the round tables. It sounds brilliant,
Thank
and
you.
it'd be good to hear what's going on from other parts as well. You
Yes.
think, oh, yeah, I mean, you might be doing some things there that think, why are we doing it over here?
Right.
And vice versa, um, it's just I say we're all carers, either we're all parents or siblings of somebody who is autistic, and they're all at different levels. And when I hear people say, "Oh, autistic expert," I go, "Really?
Hmm.
Autism is such a great big range.
Exactly.
You can't be an expert." And I always say I'm an expert in my son's and daughter's autism, not nobody else's, because everyone is so different. What works for Keith or what works for my daughter may not necessarily work for your son.
No,
You know,
exactly. And that's also why with the team Awesomism, what we want to do is start not just having an echo chamber, but a collaboration where people
yeah,
talk to each other and learn from each other. Because you're exactly right. Like part of the whole reason why I started sharing our story was because I would say to people, if I talk to 100 autism parents, what worked for me and Peyton may only work for two or three. But if I can help those two or three be less stressed, then
mm,
that's the whole concept behind Team Awesomism is if we're doing all these different roundtables, so then by the time the end of just 1 month, you've had 70, 80, 100 people's different opinions on different things. Guess what? We then can reach way more people. That's part
yeah,
of why when you just listen to, one person or one doctor or one lawyer say something, it's like, well, that doesn't fit me. That doesn't work for me. That's not what my situation is, you know,
yeah,
and that's why we came up with this concept. That's why this is so important. And that's why I wanted to have you on today because your story is very different than my story, but we both are autism parents. We both have
yeah,
if here's the scope of where we are as parents. This much of it you and I overlap on. This much we
mm,
don't. So we can find what we have in common here and learn from each other here. And
yeah,
that's why I want to have share the stories, share from all over the world, because my last podcast guest was from India. I want to share the world's story because maybe then too, when people realize And I know for me, this is the truth for me. If I know there's other people out there struggling the way I'm struggling, feeling the way I'm feeling, that alone can help take my stress level from here to here, because it's kind of like I'm not the only person here feeling this way.
Mm. It's similar with my daughter because my son was at respite this weekend, so I had a good weekend to do other stuff. But sometimes it's hard because my daughter's doing well. She works and she's come a long way. But it's times when she has the meltdowns
Mhm.
because she's verbal and she can say some things that she don't mean, and it's really hard to deal with mentally. Whereas my son has a meltdown, he's non-verbal. When you see my son straight away, you can tell he's got learning disabilities and whatnot. But for example, we were out the other night, and we were standing in the queue at the bar, and I said, "Oh, I just want the water," which was on the drug in the jugs on the side, and my daughter wanted to get a drink, and I said, "Well, okay," and the queue had moved, and she hadn't moved. I said, "Well, get back behind the guy," and she wouldn't, and she had a mini meltdown. And it's sort of like dealing with things like that at times. Say, no, come on, and given her, because she misses out a lot because my son takes most of the
Right.
time because he's 2 to 1, 24/7. But when he's not here, we then divide our time with my daughter in doing things. But it's like she's
No, and
sometimes
that's, that's
hard
another
to
topic.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, this sounds amazing what you're doing, and
Thank
I'd
you.
love to be part of that. And because it's not only about me sharing my experiences, I'm also learning
Mhm.
from what other people are saying. And
Yeah.
then if I hear somebody else that's having that same thing, well, actually, I was talking to a carer once and they did this and that and the other. I mean, my son, for example, to get him to have a haircut, he loves crisps or Chris the UK cut, style, and he'll do anything for a bag of them. So sit him down with a few bags of crisps. The wife being a hairdresser, she cuts his hair. Great. Even when he had to have his COVID jab, and they had to come into the house to do it. And we thought the Chris would work, but he saw somebody come into the house. Nada.
Right.
Um, and when he come home when he was burnt, we called 999, and the ambulance was on its way, and they had to sedate him to get him into the ambulance and get him to the hospital because he would not. He was so complex, and we said that all along, and that's what we said to the council when they were threatening us with the blood test. So, well, look, he's seen the GP a few days ago, and the GP says everything that you've accusing him of is not there. He's as fit as a fiddle, and they said no, we want a blood test because we don't believe the medication is right,
Oh,
basically.
wow.
And that was on tape. They wanted to check the medication levels. So obviously, when he was in hospital a few months later or a year later, we got a blood test done and asked for the results, and they said everything's fine. So I sent them to the LA and said, because you made such a fuss over this, here are the results, and you'll see it was as we told you. It was okay. But again, it was okay. They've got to listen to people like us.
No,
But I want
exactly.
to as well.
Well, I definitely appreciate you being on today, and you will definitely be a part of our roundtables. And thank you so
That's
much
lovely.
for
Thank you.
everything you do. And I love your Twitter. And, I know everybody calls it X now, but I still call it Twitter.
I still call it Twitter as well.
Yeah, because it's just too hard when you say X and people go, what? Um, so, but, I appreciate it. And, we will definitely record you with because that's how we'll do it through Zoom with the
Okay.
roundtables. And excuse me. And, let's just keep this dialogue going. Let's just keep the
Yeah.
flow going, because the more we all stick together, the more we can help change things,
Yep,
because,
definitely. I couldn't agree more. There's strength in numbers at the end of the
yes,
day. With one
exactly.
person, they can try and quieten you, and some people then get worn down. I've been in that position. I've had enough. I'm imagining it all. I can't go on no more. The fight is making me ill, and it's like with the LGO's decision. We could have gone on and took it to court, but I thought we're at a positive place.
Yeah.
And my son's getting back his health, his wise, I'm getting back. If we go to court and then because he'd already found in our favour, it would have made it harder. So I'm now fighting on other fronts and hopefully making changes there. So that's all I can do, and talk to other carers and take notes and be there for other carers.
Yeah, exactly. And we share our stories and we share our positives and our negatives so that maybe if we can help somebody else not go through as many negatives or have a few more positives, then we've done our job too as parents of adults with autism.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
But thank you so much, Paul. And we
That's
will
okay.
see you soon.
You too. And I would say good luck for the season.
Now go Bears.
What
Might
Vikings are
listen.
second over, so I don't know against who. It could be against you guys. So
Oh, let me tell you something. Then you'll win because I just don't think my Bears are going to get it together. I'm so irritated with them. They're so bad.
You want to know what's worse? I've got a daughter who's a Cowboy fan.
My husband
And
is.
I've got a wife who's a Finn fan. Who
Oh,
you can imagine what stick I've been going through last year.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my husband's a Cowboys fan, so yeah, I live it. Trust me. Yeah, I know.
So, but yeah, okay then. Thank you ever so much. And I say, yeah, keep me in with the loop for the round table. And if you ever want to meet and do another chat like this, then go ahead. Let me know.
Thank you.
If I'm
I
free,
love it.
I'll do it.
I'll probably take you up on that. Thank you so much. Take
Okay
care.
then, no worries. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.